So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital
Today we're going
revolution.
to be talking about hiring people in Turkey. It's part of my international comparative human resources studies where I look at all of the different practices and procedures and laws across the world. This article is from, and forgive me, Bazoglu Izgi Attorney Partnership. Izgi is a lot of fun to say. It's written by these two people. We'll first start talking about background checks. There's no legal restrictions banning background checks or enabling them, but they have to be compliant with the personal protection of personal data law. And there's a lot of these where the personal data law, the protection of personal data is so critical and so important throughout the world that it overrules a lot of HR laws. And that's what you're seeing here. Um, One thing that we want to talk about in the context of Turkey is that while it is legal and possible, there aren't a lot of third party firms that conduct background checks, and they're not common in Turkey. And that's really important to understand. We can talk about the law all day, but without discussing what the actual law means in real life in these countries, we're really just sort of discussing nothing, frankly. Employers do have to request a medical exam from successful applicants before commencement of employment under their OSHA law, and it sets out how they have to do it. And so, an employer can refuse to hire an applicant who refuses such examinations because it's required on the employee or in the first place. And of course, this is a wide array of different responses to this. There are quite a few African nations, for example, that require medical exams prior to working. And then likewise, there are quite a few countries out there that ban it or heavily restrict it, depending on the nature of it. I like this. I don't know how much of this is flourishing writing from the authors, but it says, pursuant to Article 17 of the Constitution, the corporeal integrity of the individual shall not be violated except when medically necessary and in cases prescribed by law. Although I would argue that the required medical exam is one of those, but it's required by the state. And so some drug and alcohol testing is allowed, for certain jobs, but it's not part of Turkish labor legislation. And as a result, it is accepted that such testing may only be administered when a job is particularly dangerous and when there is a reasonable suspicion that such tests are required. They still have to comply with data protection, but they can free to choose. So it's sort of a mixed bag. I mean, employers can decide not to hire someone who doesn't take a drug test. There are no specific privileges granted to any individual, family group, or class, but employers are under obligation to enter into contracts with certain groups of people. Labor Act of Turkey number 4857, which supports employment of people with disabilities, says that establishments employing 50 or more employees shall employ disabled persons and ex-convicts. The total ratio of disabled employees to be employed within the scope shall be 3% in the private establishments and 4% in the public sector, while the ratio for the ex-convicts shall be 2% for the public sector. That's a really interesting thing. We've seen quite a bit of these, what would be considered quotas in the United States. We do not have such quotas, especially for disabled employees in the United States, but I have been seeing that in Switzerland, among other countries. So there does have to full-time employment contracts with indefinite terms may be established without having a formal written employment contract, but an employer must give the new employee a written document within 2 months of the date of employment containing the terms, daily or weekly hours, payment terms, termination provisions, and so forth. It seems very weak. I mean, this just giving them a letter, what I would consider to be an offer letter, after 2 months of working is a little bit strange. And it seems like there is no specific definitions or requirements. There is no maximum duration for fixed term employment contracts, but they can only be used under objectively justifiable conditions. And there's a lot of places like this, a lot of countries like this, where you can only do a fixed term contract if it's for the completion of a specified work project or due to a certain event. Uh, Probationary periods can only last up to 2 months, but could be extended up to 4 with the collective bargaining agreement. Of course, the United States has no official probationary periods and is employer to employer. Turkey has some pretty stringent rules with respect to temporary employment, and it's only can be established on limited occasions and subject to limitations. They have quite a bit of laws on it, where temporary employment may be established through either private employment offices that have authority to do so, or by appointment within the body of the holding or in another workplace affiliated with the same group of companies. So temporary employment is seems to be fairly rare and is one of those things that is heavily regulated. Let me know what you think about the human resources of Turkey. Is it what you expected? Did you expect, for example, a quota limit on the disabled as well as on ex-convicts? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.